Special Agent John Hartley, FBI. Ever since you stole William Strang's lady with the red hat.
Hello, boys.
Help me catch the bishop.
Bye-bye, Agent John Hartley.
Here's a recap of a very interesting movie. Today, the movie we are going to recap is Red Notice, which is very interesting and exciting. So before we start, please subscribe to our channel. Let's start. The beginning of the narrative took place 2,000 years ago because he was very devoted to her. The Roman general Antony sent 3 priceless eggs to the Egyptian queen Cleopatra as a wedding present. Although 2 of them passed away here, the actual cause of their demise was those 3 eggs. These 3 eggs cost a lot in today's market. The eggs were eventually lost, but 2 of them were found again in 1907 by a farmer. 1 egg is being sold, while the other is being held in a museum in Rome. The 3rd one is still missing. Then, a man is seen creating a fake egg. Afterwards, the action shifts to Rome, where the FBI team shows up. John and Urvashi, 2 FBI agents, served as the team's leaders. John checks the egg and declares that Norman has completed his task. He then orders the museum to close, because a man by the name of Norman intends to steal the egg there. Norman has stolen eggs, and this egg is fake, until he removes a Coke from a child's hand and pours it over the egg. The manager doesn't believe him. The egg instantly begins to dissolve.
Hey, sorry, big man, but there's no food or drink in the museum.
This is the first time Norman has been spotted in this chamber after Urvashi asked to close the room upon noticing this. John and Urvashi made a valiant effort to catch Norman when he fled, but they were unsuccessful. After 56 hours had passed, some scenery of Bali, when Norman hears John's voice.
Nice place you got here. Special Agent John Hartley, FBI.
He goes to the spot where he picks up the egg. Then John and the FBI team arrive to arrest Norman, as seen later. John is familiar with Norman's entire background. John then loads the egg and Norman into different automobiles. The egg was then to be taken by the officer John had designated, but it turned out to be Bishop, who was also a thief. She alters the back leg to look like an egg and steals the egg to get away. The scene was then replayed 32 hours later in Rome, and Urvashi informs John that the FBI has suspicions about the egg he carried in the car.
What are you doing with that? Booth gave us a fake egg.
Yeah, I'll admit Booth was my first thought too.
John orchestrated the incident. John tried to persuade her, but Urvashi had him detained and imprisoned in Russia. He sees Norman in that prison, and Norman tells him about how an Egyptian billionaire got him to agree to 3 eggs at his daughter's wedding as a condition of getting them. $300 million will be paid to the person who completes this task. Since nobody was aware of the whereabouts of the 3rd egg, John subsequently questioned him about it. According to Norman, he was considering the 2nd egg. It involved a dealer in weapons. He places the egg in a locker that was built in his home. Then he announces that his home will host a party in a few days. In the next scene, we see Norman yell at everyone that John is a police officer. The inmates present then started attacking John. When the police arrived, they were halted.
Police, not a cop! This man is not a cop! He's a profiler for the FBI.
Then the bishop arrived and announced that the captain wanted to meet with them. She says she's sorry for trapping them, and that the 3rd egg, about which only Norman is aware, is the reason she came here. Norman will be freed from jail in exchange for a 10% payment from her. Bishop then left when Norman rejected this offer. John claims that if Norman assists him, both of them will benefit from proving their innocence. John reminded Norman that the dealer's party was tomorrow. The following day, Norman informs him about his strategy, which was considerably more straightforward. They started by blowing soap into a cleaning solution, and then there was a blast, drawing everyone's attention to how hard the Russian authorities had worked to stop them. They made it out of here just as John was about to pass away. Bishop is then seen at the London house of an FBI agent. By removing all of her reports from there using his system, she is able to learn that John and Norman have escaped. After that, Norman calls his friend, and together they fly to the location in his friend's aircraft. In the meantime, Norman explains to John how he intends to access the locker by feeding the security guard. Only by recognizing the dealer's voice and appearance will the titanium metal locker open. Norman claims that his fingerprint and password will open the security. Thus, in order to do so, we must grab his phone. The next scenario takes place at a party where John is instructed to grab a phone by Norman, who then goes to retrieve the fingerprint. They see the bishop is also present. John visits the bishop after being strongly persuaded by the Normans.
Beautiful.
I'm sorry, do we know each other? It's just impassable.
To make the dealer envious and approach him, John wants to dance with Bishop. At this time, John will successfully complete his strategy by stealing his phone. Norman, on the other hand, was able to get the thumper in by using his wits. When they reach the vault, Urvashi joins them and tries to stop them, but they are able to escape. Urvashi enters the room and discovers that the Bishop is already there. They then engage in combat with the Bishop but fail, and we then see the dealer arrive with his entourage. They were actually collaborating on a plan to bring John and Norman here. Bishop then threatens Norman with torture if he does not reveal the location of the third egg, and they immediately begin torturing John. As a result, no man informs them of the third egg's location inside a pyramid. The transaction of feints here, and the dealer and Bishop are subsequently shown drinking and partying in Egypt. It is acknowledged that Bishop deceived the dealer. When the dealer eventually regains consciousness, he is unable to see clearly and fires the revolver, unintentionally releasing John's handcuffs. When they left and discovered it was a bull stadium, Norman explained that he had given the erroneous address to Bissau. This caused John to want to leave Norman. They found a way to leave the area somehow. They ride a train there in the subsequent scene. Because John terrifies Norman, Norman refused to tell him where the third egg was because he feared for his safety. Later, John gets upset and informs Norman that Norman will overtake Bishop as the world's top thief if he can catch Bishop. When a dedicated member of the HTLs discovered the egg in April 1945, Norman said he then departed Germany with all his belongings. Many people, including Norman's father, were looking for him when he traveled to Argentina. After his father passes away, Norman discovers a watch in his father's drawer. He deduces from the watch that the third egg is concealed in an Argentinian jungle. After that, the two of them traveled to the forest and arrived at the covered bunker. The bunker is then opened by Norman using his father's watch. When they visit, they discover many priceless items. They do manage to find the third egg though, and Bishop arrives there as well before they exit. Bishop then informs them that she has always followed them. Then, Urvashi and the FBI team approach there and attack them. They drove away and emerged into a fountain. Then we observe a new twist. John and Bishop collaborated to locate the third egg there. John admits to Norman that he aspires to be a bigger thief than his father, who is also a thief. Then they ran away after tying Norman to a tree. The next scene takes place during the wedding of that Egyptian billionaire's daughter, where the three eggs were brought together to the delight of the young bride. John and Bishop are there at this celebration, and they have $300 million. When Urvashi and her FBI team eventually showed up and detained the billionaire, John and Bishop fled upon seeing this.
This is an Interpol police action. Remain in your seats.
A year later, we see Bishop and John enjoying themselves on a boat. At that moment, Norman shows up, and the two of them are startled to see him. He describes how Urvashi again detains him and takes him to a Russian prison. But Norman escapes from there, follows the two of them, and eventually makes it to this location. Norman informs John that after telling Urvashi about his $300 million, he no longer has anything left. And then Norman informs them that if they don't cooperate with him on his new assignment, Urvashi will soon arrive and arrest them. Before Urvashi arrived, they reached an agreement despite John's initial opposition after Bishop persuaded him. The movie ends here. The following scene shows them in Paris as they are getting ready for a fresh theft there. This scene also gives us a hint that there may be a sequel to this film like him. For watching more exciting recaps of the movies, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.